Welcome to On the Fly, High School Edition, a podcast presented by Playfly Sports. I'm your host, Chuck Schmidt, Executive Director and Vice President for the High School Division at Playfly. Playfly Sports is the full-service marketing and media company bringing digitally enabled innovations to the sports industry. Today, I'm really excited to have a dear friend of mine and one of the best thinkers in high school, bar none, Mr. Julian Tackett, the Executive Director for the Kentucky High School Athletic Association. Julian, welcome to On the Fly.
Thanks, Chuck. Good to be here. Always glad to talk to you.
Well, my pleasure. And now that we've relocated to Virginia, I'm hoping to come out and spend some time with you personally and just get caught up. And, Julian, we go way back. My first real experience working with you when I was in the Arizona Association was when we were on the Longhorn Network Committee together. And we had the opportunity to provide input on behalf of state associations across the country on how content, high school content, may be distributed through the various conference networks, cable channels, and in this case, obviously, the Longhorn Network. How have you seen coverage of high school sports change in your time at Kentucky since then? Or, what's going on in the world right now with regard to the media coverage?
Well, I think we've seen an evolution without question. When I first started, you looked for the old-time newspaper writer that carried a portable typewriter, and as long as you had him a copy of the mimeographed data at the end of a game or ditto machine, and most of your listeners will probably have to look up those terms, but as long as you had the statistics and things ready for them, you'd done half their story. And our role in the initial deal with media relations was simply could we find a way? And what I did was kind of try to get ahead of the curve. Could we find a way to do that part of the job for them, get all the data, so that they could then really feature our stories and focus in instead of on just the drudgery of typing rows and columns? Could they actually highlight this kid or that kid? And we found that to be productive. And we've seen that evolution through the industry all over the country. Yeah. Now you see newspapers shutting down all the time. You see photographers. That was the first big expense that a lot of the newspapers cut, which I'm not sure was very wise, but they cut their photography budget, quit sending photo people to events. So they didn't have the one item that might be the one picture that got 5 people to subscribe. The media coverage has changed. And then with the advent of social media, it has made everybody think they're a media person. And it has taken the filter off of a lot of people that frankly would be better still filtered. I think that sometimes it has exposed our weakness. I can remember going to a meeting in Kansas City when the Federation was talking about moving to Indianapolis, and we sat there and a guy from IBM was talking about this new thing that was coming called electronic mail. And this guy from IBM was talking about how he was pretty sure it was going to empower the village idiot. And I'm really not sure that it didn't take, that and exponentiate with social media. Social media is a fantastic thing for you to use if you're in control of the message. It is a potential disaster if you somehow aren't in control of the message. And the one thing that I try to preach to our staff and any other group that I'm working with is that try to get ahead of the message. Even if you start out behind, get yourself ahead. Find a way to get back in control. That's probably the biggest thing, is that you see a lot of people who, frankly, a lot of our media today are not as gifted writers as they used to be. You don't see a lot of Pulitzer Prize winning sports writers anymore because content is king. And that's what became so evident during our initial study when we were first looking at the Longhorn Network. It's really about, could we find a way to grab things, aggregate them, and get people that are interested in sports always having something they could see. Yeah. And so it's been an interesting transition for sure.
So, Julian, with that, I'd like to have you give your observation on social media. We're now starting to see the studies on the impact of mental health, especially with the kids that we serve. Has Kentucky engaged in any kind of educational opportunity, or are you seeing member schools working with their children that they serve to educate them as to the potential perils or opportunities, as you said, with social media?
I think the biggest thing I'd say, Chuck, is that in looking back on it, I think our schools first started to do what the government did in the 30s and decided prohibition was the best way to deal with it. We're just not going to allow cell phones in the school, and that didn't work.
Mm-hmm.
And, it didn't work for a lot of reasons. Really bad combination of events happened, and we work really closely with our Department of Education. But about the same time people were trying to de-emphasize cell phones, we had a national uptick in school-related violence and shootings, where parents wanted Johnny to be able to call them and tell them they were okay. They wanted, if something did happen, and that was just the confluence of those two things together did not bode well for prohibition. Just like America coming off the Depression didn't bode well for getting people to stop drinking alcohol. It's just, no, it's not going to work. So what we've really tried to do is we've worked with our Department of Ed and really trying to get them to understand it is a tool. And, I always say, and I stole this from a meeting I attended one time, and I've never found the originator, but in America, we are absolutely blessed with freedom of speech. But we're not blessed with consequences from what we say. And that's the lesson that kids sometimes struggle with, is that, I have seen dozens every year of people who had an opportunity to get a college education paid for, or at least a partial college education. And some Twitter thing they put out, or some Instagram message, or Snapchat, or now TikTok videos, the recruiter got a hold of them and said, we're not taking a chance on that kid. I can't do it. And most of the time, what people don't understand is when on the athletic side, and I think it's true on the academic side, but on the athletic side, there's a ton of people trying to fit in this funnel of a small number of opportunities. And a lot of times they're looking for reasons to get you off the list, not get you on the list. They need the list to be more manageable. And social media is one of the quickest things that trip people up. The other thing that I think everybody would agree, regardless of what side of the aisle your politics leans on, that the last 3 years we have seen how bad social media can be for confusing fact from fiction. And our dependency on it. I know we're helping raise a nephew of ours, and he is constantly, whatever somebody just said on Snapchat is the gospel. Whatever somebody just said, and they're not even trying to filter. And then we wonder how misinformation spreads. So we're really trying to educate them on it. We're also really, really looking for those that scoff and laugh and think that cyberbullying is fake and not real. They are wrong. It is very much a factor in. Some kids are really influenced by the slightest negative. When I was growing up, and I suspect because of how much we're alike, you were just like this too. I really didn't care what anybody said about me. They could say it, and we'd go outside and settle it, or go to the basketball court and settle it, or something. I didn't worry about it.
Right.
But today, there's more. I don't want to say sensitivity, but I think people react quicker to. They either accept that what is being said about them means that they're somehow inferior, or they somehow feel threatened. I think that happens more and more. And part of the problem is we're with it 24/7. My own problem when the pandemic, and we'll probably talk about this later, but my own problem with the pandemic as a senior administrator is I sleep with my phone right beside me on the nightstand. And I found myself as a 60-year-old man going, put the dang thing down.
Yeah.
It's okay if you don't know the stats of the hospital inpatient count in New York City this second. It's okay. And I think the instantaneous ability of using the devices and social media is good, but it cannot come without filtering. It cannot come without an understanding. Could this really be true? You see it every day. If you have a good quote somebody's given you, you Google it, and there'll be 3 different authors attributed to it.
Right.
And you don't even know which one's accurate unless you've really, really thought about it or do some digging and realize that as much as I love him and as much as he was from Kentucky, Abraham Lincoln didn't say every good quote.
Right.
There's a whole lot of things that other people said.
Yeah,
so it's a constant challenge.
Julian, you bring up just, again, this is why I love talking to you both professionally and personally is, in educational athletics, our focus needs to be on the student. And I think what I say and have seen is that adults forget that those are kids on the court, and they start posting things on social media or blogs or some anonymous source, and they don't recognize the potential impact, as you said, right, that it can have on that student. Does the Kentucky Association have any recourse, or do you try and protect students from that type of abuse?
Well, there's a couple of things. We're a mandatory reporting agency in Kentucky. I mean, we're a private nonprofit, but we are designated with certain official roles. So if we see abuse going on, anything that could be considered abuse, we're obligated to report it, and we've done so. We have had that happen, and most of the time it's traced back to, it's somebody's ex-girlfriend or boyfriend. It's somebody's, they beat them out for playing time. It's usually peer to peer, but we have most certainly followed through. We also, for the adults that are involved, we were one of the first states to have penalties for sportsmanship related to either our coaches or officials. We tell them stay out of that. One of the first things we tell our officials when they get a high rating assignment like a state championship is, your social media ends right now and you can start it when you get done. And you do not have to do that. But remember, we don't have to use you. You're an independent contractor. So
yeah.
we can set conditions. Our officials are great at it. Our coaches are, 99%. And the 1%'s the guy that got beat on a last second crazy call. And we get that. The day we take human emotion out of the level we're dealing with is the day we should close. There needs to be emotion. Emotion keeps a good athlete. Involvement keeps a good athlete from getting hurt. They invested in it. They stay more. If they start sloughing off, that's when they step and turn an ankle, or that's when they fall crazy. So we need them focused and energized. The kids themselves, we do watch for what people are saying. It's amazing to me, and I'm going to try to use political correctness with you that I don't normally use. It is amazing the lack of intelligence that some people demonstrate by they will say something that's definitely bullying or derogatory, and they'll tag us in the post.
Yeah,
I'm like, okay, I'm glad you did that so we can see it. But it is there's just sometimes the pool of ignorance is deeper than you think, and we try to watch what's going on and catch the obvious. We don't have any recourse, nor do we really want recourse against the average Joe fan that comes in and says, this is crazy. We had a situation last week. It was pretty funny. We got about a 2-page email from a guy that wanted a refund on his admission to the state soccer tournament because he didn't like the officiating. And you get those kind of things, but
right.
but that's just part of our business. You learn to laugh about it. One of the things about Kentucky, we are in the public retirement system. So when you have 27 years experience and you're 55 years old, you're kind of ready to have options. Yeah. And I've got 38 years here, and I'm 60 years old. So I not only have options, I have no filter. So, I'm the guy that will sometimes respond to people and say, are you really kidding me?
Yeah.
And most of the time they'll do the same thing we all would do. My fault. God, that was stupid. Got caught up in the moment. Yeah. I'm okay. And then, you're not trying to flog them. You just want to make sure they thought about it, that what they did was probably not the best thing. The other thing that we continue to do at this level, and this as well as anyone, is at this level, we are the learning level. Our players make stupid decisions. Our coaches don't call the right play all the time, and our officials miss calls. And I think that's really true at every level, but God, it's especially true at ours. We still quote the same stats that when you were with Arizona. It's 6% of people that play high school get to go to college at some level or not. Right. Now, my running joke is that 94% of parents think their kids in the 6%, but But it's we just got to keep in mind that for most of these people, other than playing church league or travel softball, their career is going to end after high school.
Yeah.
So let's don't. Why would you take that experience and just ruin it because some kid had a bad game, or some kid didn't make decisions, didn't make. I've seen people whose teams are 9-0 and they lose that 10th football game and the sky is falling. I mean, my gosh, and you're just, are you serious? I mean, over a ball game, nobody died. And I tell our staff all the time, and I'm sure that people you work for at Arizona told you too. On your worst day, you got a career in sports. How bad can it really be?
Right.
So, this stuff that grays our hair or takes our hair, it's stressful.
Or both.
But yeah,
It's true. And I want to divert. I know we talked about some of the questions, but one of the things that I'm finding troubling too is this social media, not only the bullying, but I don't know if you've seen over the past week this running up of scores that we saw in California, Illinois for stat padding or whatever, or to get that blurb on social media to drive that. Are you seeing much of that in Kentucky or with other states you're talking to? Is that really as predominant as we've seen it this week?
I think it's isolated, but I think it is the thing that, the old quote that's attributed to P.T. Barnum, that any publicity is good publicity, is some people think that. Some people will do it extra. I think there are states that use rating systems that have to do with points. And I know anything, which is why we're one of 25 or 30 that's gone to a very similar system. It's based off the original RPI, but basically you beat somebody by 1, it's the same as beating them by 101. You get no reward in ratings. So, because I think that unfortunately we are trapped in our own devices sometimes, in that we can't help ourselves as people. We get an advantage off somebody. They beat me last year. I got them down. I've got my foot on their throat. I'm going to beat them as bad as I can. And even our most common, our most popular concept of ethics and sportsmanship can go out the window. You and I were together a long time ago when we were first working with the NFHS on developing a coaching education program. And one of the things we talked about was how hard it was to really teach ethics to an adult. Because so much of that ethical stuff, if you didn't have it in your family upbringing, it's really hard to add it to an adult. But we've seen that. I think you've seen a lot of measures to prevent that. You've got a lot of states that have adopted rules that run the clock after certain margins. You've got a lot of rules that adopt a run rule. I never was a big fan of just stopping competition because of certain margins, but I think you can shorten it and give the coach an indicator. I'll give you a real quick example. We've got in both football and basketball the rule where if you get 35 points apart, then the clock just runs the rest of the game. And that's number one, you won't get that score that far apart. But number two, it also gives that coach a jolting reminder. Look, if little Tommy's going to play, you better get him in because the clock's running pretty fast. Right. If you really want to get somebody in, and they're not generally going to call timeout, throw an extra pass. We have seen most of that because I saw a little bit about the situation in Illinois. I try not to pay much attention to California. I jokingly tell them that all the time.
But, I know Ron would appreciate that.
Yeah, Ron wants to just kind of leave him alone. But sometimes the situation, what people don't know and they'll never know is that 3 years ago there was this game and there was this so-and-so that got charged for a ticket and they didn't let him in on his pass, and now he's coaching this team, and by God, he's going to run it up on them. There is so much of a backstory in some of these real isolated cases. I remember when the first one came out of California, best I recall, it was a girls' basketball team, and it was 100-5 or something. And there was something about this girl needed 55 points to get in this mention so she might get a scholarship. It was just so misguided. It was crazy. But those happen. I really don't think you see those as often as the publicity around one incident would make you believe.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. It's really, I've not heard you say that term before, but I'm going to plagiarize it from you. It's the learning level. That is one of the best ways to describe our opportunities in high school or educational athletics. Julian, been a tough year with COVID and everything going on. Not necessarily one of the challenges I'm asking you to talk about, but from the standpoint, what challenges are you seeing for your state and for high school sports or educational athletics as a whole right now?
High school sports and the community basis of it, partly because of its cost, but partly because they know the people, is coming back with a vengeance.
Yep.
Saturday, we had our Friday and Saturday this past week, we had our 2-day state cross country competition. We have it out on a farm, a thoroughbred farm, near a thoroughbred farms in Bourbon County, Kentucky, which is some of the best horse country around. Rolling, beautiful hills. Starting Friday about 3 to Saturday morning about 4 a.m., we had 2.5 inches of rain. The word quagmire does not begin to describe it. People were at the top of their shoes in mud. We had 20% more people attend in person.
Wow.
And trudge up that hill and watch it than had ever attended a cross country meet for us. And we've had beautiful weather before.
Yeah.
We had this week, we had our soccer tournament. We're not a real big soccer state, but we broke every attendance record out there. And
Right.
that's what I'm hearing all around me and all the other states is that, we were all worried about, rightfully so, would our sports return to that level? Would people basically, would we have the same thing happen in playing and fans coming to the game as we did with officiating? We've seen the fact that officials that have been longtime officials got out because of COVID, and they realized how much they were missing in their life.
Yeah.
They just said, I'm not going back. That's not what the fans have done. The fans said, not only am I coming back, Granny's coming and cousin Jane's coming and everybody else is coming. It's just, it's really been a blessing for all of us.
That's awesome news. I just, the impact of high school sports in so many communities, rural, urban, doesn't matter. But the impact it has to bring a community together is so awesome. And when you see that in action across a state event, it really uplifts, everybody involved. And it's truly amazing.
No doubt. And we are that building level. And I used to love the way we used this campaign. Michigan used it. Ohio used it. And this is what parents cannot stand to hear, but we are not preparing students for the next level of competition.
Right.
We are preparing students for the next level of life.
Yeah.
Because the vast majority of them, as soon as they finish, you're going to see them in the grocery store. Then you're going to see them pushing a stroller with their baby. Then you're going to see them growing up with their family in the church or in the community. They're your people. Yeah. Even if they didn't get there in roles that you and I used to play, even if they didn't always get to that community in the most legitimate way, they still end up staying there.
Yeah,
and they build that community. So it is community building, and the values taught by high school athletics are values that stick with them forever.
Yeah.
You've heard me say this, the best example we can ever give of what high school sports does is to look at an offensive line. Not one of them is worth a quarter by themselves.
Right.
But working together, they can do anything.
That's right.
And so, we learn that at the young level. Now, if we happen to be blessed with extra talent, extra size, extra work ethic, whatever, and the right opportunity, we can go further. But think about if only 94% develop all those characteristics, 94% of our citizens would be pretty good people.
Yeah.
That's a great goal.
It is. So when you see the landscape changing as it is in college, any concerns on your part about how that's going to trickle down and get into our high school environment?
Yes. I get, been around a couple semesters. I get why the NCAA had to do what they did. I understand antitrust law. I understand there's lots of things behind NIL that have nothing to do with the way NIL turned out.
Yep.
But if we think that the ability to freely pay college students for their image is not eventually going to lead to play for performance, and not eventually going to lead to why not me? I'm not in the 6%. Then we're probably living in the land of oblivion. We've got to watch. It's been a great experience for us. We are blessed with our two flagship universities have been in touch with us from moment one about NIL and making sure. Take you back to your former role when you were dealing with the rules and things, the eligibility rules in Arizona.
Yeah.
Tell me how you're going to tell that parent whose kid can take that $5,000 marketing agreement for the college they've committed to, that somehow now they've lost the high school opportunity, and see how long that lasts in your courts and in your legislature. So, we fight an ethereal battle and a principled battle for the preservation of this. But I think we got to be smart and know that, number one, we have to be at the table when these rules are being crafted. You know the expression we've all heard in our business: if you're not at the table, you're probably on the menu.
Yeah.
And if we're not at the table in this case, it's going to be very, very challenging. So we have to force our way to the table and get some elbow room and say, look, tell us what, if you're going to, we're dealing with our legislature right now. Our legislature, we have a pretty fair university basketball team at one of our schools that traditionally gets a whole lot of top flight signees. They only keep them 1 year until they send them to pros, but they get them. It's going to be hard for us to have that landscape to where that kid can go out and get an endorsement deal at a car dealership.
Yeah.
Go out and get that. And then we're going to turn around and tell them, oh, but by the way, you can't take it while you're still playing here.
Yeah.
And especially going to be difficult for an in-state kid. That's what my current worry is. We have two highly recruitable in-state kids that are going to have NIL deals. They're probably already lined up. So there's two worries that come in. One is, what does that do to our landscape? Because I've also got the fellowship of the jealous. I've got the other schools who don't have that kid that want anyway. They want that kid out of here no matter what.
Yeah.
Okay, let him go ahead and go. But the other piece is, what is that doing to the locker room dynamic? When Julian and Chuck are above average players, but we've got this real deal stud, do we really feel like setting a pick for him?
Right.
Do we really feel like doing that? If he's going to be getting all the benefits, that we have to understand these kids are still developing mentally, emotionally, and physically, and they're not going to be able to process this like a logical adult. They're changing every day. And it's even worse if their boyfriend or girlfriend just broke up with them.
Right.
So we're dealing with very fragile mental states, as they should be. They're developing.
Yeah.
So, how does all of that play together? How does the haves and the have-nots, what I'm seeing right now in our state and in others, has zero to do with NIL, but I am seeing through COVID a gradual, sometimes precipitous, divide between the haves and the have-nots.
Yep.
It's getting worse. And because we have in our state association, we bring in all schools of all types. So we have public schools that their local teachers unions or other groups really push them not to go to school for fear for their teachers. We have some private schools that said, heck with it, we're plowing forward. And they're actually marketing using that.
Yeah.
They're using that fact. So they're getting more enrollment. Now people are talking about going back and forth. The other piece that's really, forget COVID, the thing that's going to drive all of us in our business crazy is the fact that the NCAA has acquiesced on their transfer restrictions.
Yes.
And, I can just get mad because I didn't play enough in the November exhibition game, and in December I'm eligible somewhere else. Yeah. We used to joke, as a longtime basketball and football college official, we used to joke about working at the NAIA games. And you'd have one roster in the December games, and at the Christmas break they had a brand new team. Because they had a bunch of transfer. We're going to see that at the Division I level. You think that's not going to be pushed at our level? Our little state deals with about 1,100 hardship cases a year.
Yeah.
We're at 1,900 the 1st of November. I mean, people are they're seeing that. There's no penalty for what I say. I don't have to go by team rules. Coach, you get mad at me, I'll just leave. That's one of the real fears, is that I don't think the action of our fantastic teaching coaches, and they may not even be a teacher for a living, but they're always teaching. Their action is not necessarily being backed up in the home. And I have said here, and I will say here till the day I leave, number one is the kid. If the adults are happy, fine. It is not a requirement. Number one is the kid. If you got doubt, go back to rule number one. So I mean, I really think that we just have to keep that in perspective, and we've got to be hard-headed about it.
Yeah, Julian, I have not offered this to any of the other guests, but if you wouldn't mind, I'd love to bring you back in the spring. Because I have a feeling your predictions, your insight, your concerns are going to manifest themselves in a number of different ways over the course of the next 4 to 6 months. And before the school year ends, if you wouldn't mind, I'll send you another invite if you've got the time. I'd love to have you back, talk more about these issues, because educational athletics is an institution in our country that is, you've mentioned, it's the learning level, it's the community, it's teaching kids and giving them the opportunity to become better people. And, we've talked about this in various venues and in various ways, but it's under attack.
Yeah.
And how
it's so unique. It's so unique to our country too.
Yes.
And if you deal with it with foreign students and their eligibility when they try to come in, it's always more apparent then, because it's just you don't have a baseline. We believe in this level because we believe in community. I will leave here saying that I have never seen a parade behind a fire truck for an AAU team.
That's right.
And I mean, I'm not disparaging AAU. I'm talking about third-party teams. You don't see it, but buddy, that high school team that's won something, it's on the sign when you enter the county. It's everywhere you go, and it doesn't matter what state you're in. And it is worth fighting for, and guaranteeing these kids that chance to have that opportunity is worth fighting for. So we'll keep fighting it. We'll see a few months if it's changed.
Yeah. Well, again, Julian, I've always, more than you'll ever know, appreciated our personal friendship. I don't know if words can express my admiration of your leadership in our country. For me as a mentor when I was going through some things in my previous role in Arizona, and how just watching how you've conducted yourself in Kentucky. And I'm not, this is true. I've just appreciated you. And today just only reinforces that. And, I want people to recognize what our states do. And we have to, and my goal and my role at Playfly is to help and drive opportunities to create control and opportunities for kids that the state associations can engage. So thanks for taking the time. As we close, I want to ask you, I call this my flyby, just to give people a little more insight as to who Julian Tackett is. What's your favorite movie?
It's probably still Field of Dreams.
Yeah. Well, mine's Appaloosa. You can see it in the background.
I can see that. For me, James Earl Jones' speech right before he goes out is, and plus having had a rocky relationship with my father, the ending of the movie, I can't forget
Brilliant.
that.
Yeah.
Really can't.
Brilliant movie.
And it's really good.
Do you have a favorite quote or author?
In this job, there's two things I'll real quickly say, and I keep it right above my door. Pat Summitt said this one time. She said, how you handle it is left foot, right foot, breathe, repeat. Sometimes you just have to keep moving.
Yeah.
And then Rudyard Kipling, when I was growing up, my mom gave me a copy of Rudyard Kipling's poem, If. I always recite the first two lines before a board meeting. If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. I mean, it is absolutely gospel.
Amen. That is a great poem. Gave that to my son before he went to VMI.
Yeah, there you go.
He kept it in his hat
absolutely
his whole time there. And the last thing I want to ask, as the director of the Kentucky Association, can you give us one insight on leadership that would be something you would be passing on to your staff, or people coming into the state association world?
I would probably make it this simple. It's we, not me. I see so many people who they get, even people that are peers of mine, who get hung up because of their position.
Mm-hmm.
And the day we walk out the door or announce we're walking out the door, they'll have the job announcement posted.
That's right.
This is all about what we can do for them, not what I can do. I don't need credit for it. And if you can focus that as a leader, it is amazing how much more you get done.
Well, Julian, once again, I can't thank you enough for the time. And again, just reconnecting and having the opportunity to share the Kentucky story, the Julian Tackett story, and overall look forward to having you back in the spring. And let's see where we're at.
All right, Chuck. Hopefully we're talking about that former virus by then. We'll see, but I look forward to connecting with you.
All right, my brother.
I
want to thank Julian for being with us today and his leadership and insights that he and his staff provide to Kentucky and the kids they serve in their member schools. In closing, if you're interested in joining our team and partnering with Playfly, please go to playfly.com to learn more about our company and opportunities. Also watch for future podcasts where we will be talking with leading innovators in sports and technology like Julian. Looking forward to having you join us for our next segment of On the Fly, presented by Playfly Sports. Julian, thanks again, my friend. God bless you.
Thanks a lot, Chuck.
Cheers.